What is up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's reaction video is why the US defence plan is unbeatable.
Yeah, this will be interesting, I think.
This will be interesting. I mean, as far as I was concerned, it was quite solid just from geography.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
We've seen that in quite a few videos, haven't we, where it's like, just because you're surrounded by a very good ally in Canada, and then South America is a bit of a sliver, but again, not much is coming from there, really.
No, yeah,
and then
you're
you've
a
got
strong country, like
strong
you're not
country.
A small little flaky one.
Exactly.
And you've got a good military.
Good military, massive ocean, great air force.
Yeah.
So it kind of seems like the geography does it, but we're going to see the rest of it, and maybe someone manages to get on land with tanks.
Maybe.
What's going to happen? We're going to find out. Smash that button if you enjoy, guys. Smash the subscribe button. We've got a camera for watching now, haven't we? So we can actually be a bit louder. But every so often we'll peek at the screen to make sure it's okay. It's fast asleep, isn't it? Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Why the US defence plan is unbeatable. What we got?
Could the U.S. fight off an invasion of its homeland?
I reckon,
That question has been burning a hole in the brains of Americans since before the Cold War began in 1945, and continues to do so even today. The United States military is currently one of the most well-equipped and advanced militaries on Earth.
Yeah.
But would they be able to defend the country from a highly sophisticated and all-out assault? The U.S. spent around $877 billion in 2022 on defense.
That's so much money.
Would
That's only going up
hope
as well.
that all those tax dollars are going to something useful. So, what would a potential invasion of the mainland United States look like? What factors would influence the outcome, and how would the U.S. respond? First things first, has the U.S. ever actually been invaded? Let's look at a few examples and see what the results were.
Maybe a long time
fending
ago.
off the British during the American Revolution, the U.S. in the early 1800s was cruising. Everything was trending in the right direction, and the country was growing both physically and in a sense of national spirit.
Wow. I don't know where that is, but we've been on cable cars in San Francisco, but I don't know where them ones are.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is.
It takes some gumption to pull off the deal of the century in the Louisiana Purchase. 530 million acres for $15 million, which is about $358 million today, is still a preposterous deal. There are ranches in Montana for sale today worth about half of that. So $358 million for half a continent is just insane. Regardless, the brand new United States of America thought they were living in a relatively good era, having beaten the British and continuing to establish themselves on the world stage. The British, however, had other ideas in mind. They attacked U.S. trading ships and forced captured American sailors into service in the Royal Navy. So the U.S. declared war on Great Britain to defend its honor. The war lasted from 1812 to 1815 and actually resulted in the British attacking, burning, and occupying Washington, D.C. The British troops burned a large portion of the city, including the White House and the Capitol building. President James Madison and his government had already been evacuated, but this defeat still brought great shame upon the young nation. This was the...
You know what the only thing I know about the War of 1812 is? That Francis Scott came up with the national anthem. From one of the boats, Joe, on it when there was bombing.
That's pretty good from you.
I can't remember what the actual place they were bombing was, but that's when...
Well, was it the fort?
Fort something. It was a fort, but I can't remember what it were. I can't remember. But yeah, Sir Francis Scott.
Wow.
Yeah, there you go. That's the only thing I know about War of 1812.
Only time in U.S. history that a foreign army had occupied the nation's capital. Peace was eventually negotiated and no one really won the war, but the Americans would get the last laugh as Andrew Jackson and his force of backwoods farmers, pirates, frontiersmen, former slaves, and all-around ruffians defeated an experienced, tough, and numerically superior British force in about 30 minutes in the Battle of New Orleans. The next time that the United States was invaded occurred during the Mexican-American War. The event that actually triggered the war was when Mexican forces attacked U.S. soldiers patrolling the Rio Grande. The Mexican forces then invaded Brownsville, Texas, claiming they were taking back territory that rightfully belonged to Mexico. This event was known as the Thornton Affair and caused President Polk to declare war on Mexico. Although this invasion was incredibly brief, the war that came out of it saw US troops conquer Mexico City and take control of parts of California, Texas, New Mexico, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, and parts of Colorado,
Big
Oklahoma,
chunk.
Yeah.
A
Kansas,
very big
and
chunk.
Wyoming as a result. The next major conflict to take place on American soil was the Civil War, but we'll pass on that one, given the US was fighting itself. The
Okay,
next
fair
time the
enough.
US was under threat of foreign invasion came again from its southern border with Mexico. In 1915, as war ravaged Europe, the United States watched from afar. All the while, Mexico was undergoing its own revolution. The Mexican government under Venustiano Carranza had been secretly supporting raids by bandits across the southern border of the United States that were
Oh,
violent
okay.
and chaotic.
That's not
President
good.
Woodrow Wilson supported Carranza and his government as a way of making the raids stop. But unbeknownst to him, Carranza was the one supporting the raids in the first place. So as things got more complicated and the US got more involved,
Wait. So he was supporting him to stop raids, but he was actually supporting the raids. So technically, the first guy. Wait, but technically, the first guy was supporting the raids.
Yeah, because he thought it was supporting not the raids, but
Yeah, so I mean, he was playing him. He weren't being two-faced. He was just, well, he were, I guess.
The other guy was.
Yeah, he's just like,
The first guy.
Don't worry, I'll stop him. But he's secretly.
Yeah, the first guy just thought he was
He's like, yeah, nah.
stopping, but actually, technically, he was helping.
No, I
Not
think he
supporting.
do. He do it on purpose. Yeah.
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 south of the border, a man named Pancho Villa took things into his own hands. Villa was outraged at the United States' support of Carranza and decided to launch raids of his own.
Oh.
These raids culminated in an attack on Columbus, New Mexico in 1916. Villa led the attack himself, and the battles saw heavy fighting between Villa's forces and elements of the 13th Cavalry Regiment of the U.S. Army. Villa was eventually driven back into Mexico, but this incursion would trigger a U.S. invasion of Mexico to capture Villa. The
Oh,
U.S.
wow.
defeated
Just to
Villa's
get him.
forces but failed to capture him. This would come to be known as the Pancho Villa Expedition, led by none other than John Blackjack Pershing, who would go on to greater fame in the latter years of World War I.
Okay.
Mexico
Okay.
would again be caught up in a possible invasion when the Germans in World War I tried to get Mexico to launch a large-scale invasion of the southern U.S. if America entered the war against Germany. In return, they were promised some of their former territory in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. The Mexican
don't think they
government
got
turned
any. I
them
don't think they
down,
did
but
any
this
of that.
communication got leaked and actually became one of the key justifications for the U.S.
imagine if they
joining the
did.
war. These
Well, it's mad, isn't it? You look like so many pieces of history. Like, imagine if maybe they didn't raid, would have the US have then gone and got that
Yeah.
land? Do you know what I mean? So many different pieces of history, like little things.
We would have been to Mexico instead.
Yeah, would have been to Mexico instead. But also, you think a little thing. Imagine if the British didn't lose the revolution. Imagine if Germany didn't lose World War II. You think, yes, these aren't little
Did Germany
things.
win World War II? Wait, I thought no one won. Wait, what?
You've watched
No.
Band of Brothers as well.
Oh yeah.
Are you alright?
No, but now I'm thinking, but Britain were on their side, right? On the same side as Germany.
What? What?
Wait a minute, let
You said this, we need to think.
Right, no, let me think about what.
What's the
Let me
time
think.
check? It's 25 past 10.
Let me think about what I'm actually asking you because I have a.
So you
Right.
Whoa. I know this video is long, but
Not
I
on
need
the
a
same.
second.
Not on the same side as Germany. That's wrong.
Yeah. So pretty much what you
But
just
what
said
I'm
was
saying is,
the-
so obviously America were fighting Germans, yeah.
yeah.
We were on the same side as the Americans.
Yes.
Yeah, I
It's
knew we
just
were on
Hitler.
someone's side.
Hitler was
Hitler's
German.
German, yeah. Oh my god, no, guys, we're not. Yeah, sorry. Wait,
What
yeah.
has just
I knew we were
happened?
on someone's side. I just.
What has just happened?
No, don't. It's not even funny. I'm
It's
sick,
only
no.
25 past 8.
No.
10.
No, don't, because they're gonna come for me so bad.
Oh,
Can we
it's
cut
too
this?
late. I didn't need to do anything. It's
No,
too late.
can we cut this?
No, we don't cut anything.
examples have mostly been
Oh, everyone's
isolated
gonna call me so
incidents, not
stupid on
full-scale
purpose.
invasions with the aim of conquering and controlling the U.S., although some could argue that the British came the closest. In World War II, the world was again at war, and yet again the U.S.
Oh, here we
tried
go, World War
not to be
II.
directly involved. That all changed on December 7th, 1941, when sea
Pearl
and
Harbor.
air forces from Imperial
Mistake
Japan
from Japan.
launched a
Stupid.
surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, as well as coordinated strikes on other U.S. forces around the Pacific right after. As devastating as this attack was, it did not constitute an invasion, as the Japanese forces did not seek to conquer Hawaii, only inflict as much damage to U.S. forces as they could.
Okay.
However, this attack was the most coordinated, sophisticated, and lethal attack on U.S. soil to date, and served as the springboard for the U.S. joining World War II. The Japanese did not stop there, however, and actually invaded the Aleutian Islands of Attu and Kiska. Although Alaska was not a state at the time, it was still a territory of the US and thus an invasion. Japanese forces occupied these two islands in June of 1942 and held them until August of 1943. It was the first time since the War of 1812 that a foreign army had truly invaded American soil, and the American public was furious. There was also rampant fear that the Japanese would launch an amphibious invasion of the west coast of the US.
I know it's mad. It doesn't
like close, but I forget. Like I'm gonna say another stupid thing. The world's round.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because obviously, like all the time you sit on a map and it's like, okay, Japan, Australia all the way over here, America's all the way over here.
Yeah. But it's
actually they're really close.
It's the same thing with Russia, isn't it? Like
I always forget Russia's that close to Alaska.
Yeah, exactly. You think Europe, America, and then suddenly you see there is a point where you can walk between America and Alaska, Russia and Alaska, when the lake's frozen over.
Like at the closest points, Russia and Alaska are closer than England and France.
Is that a fact? Are you telling me? It looks it.
I'm not.
Is that a fact, or are you
as
just
we've
saying
noticed that from when I'm not an expert in
throw
geography.
stuff out there.
But I feel like looking at that.
Primarily in California, these fears were mostly unfounded, as the Japanese did not have the manpower or resources to do this. So, in response, the US and Canadian militaries launched attacks on the islands to reclaim them. The only real fighting occurred on Attu, as the Japanese had secretly withdrawn their forces from Kiska before the Allied attack. Attu was a bloody affair, as Japanese and Allied soldiers fought for every inch of ground in horrendous weather. With their backs to the sea, the Japanese commander Yasuyo Yamasaki ordered a banzai charge with all of his remaining men. The charge caught the Allies by surprise and broke through to their rear echelon units. The Americans and Canadians recovered and through brutal hand-to-hand combat killed all but 28 of the Japanese soldiers on the island.
That's
impressive.
impressive.
Reclaiming the Aleutian Islands, they began turning up the heat on the Japanese Empire, and we all know how that one ended. On the other side of the map, and allied with the Japanese, you have Nazi Germany, whose insatiable conquests of Europe terrified the entire...
Why did I think we were on the same team as them?
Well, I was going to say, I mean, you just reminded everyone. Get the comments back in. Go again.
It's not even... I'm
laughing.
just reminded everyone it's not funny, but it's just... Why is my brain work like that?
You have Nazi Germany, whose insatiable conquests of Europe terrified the entire world. The American public thought that once Hitler finished off conquering the Old World, he would turn his sights toward the New World. Hitler did not believe the Americans were a formidable enemy, and even went as far to say that they had no real fighting strength because they had no racial purity. I'm sure he lived to regret that one when the Tuskegee Airmen began shooting down his vaunted Luftwaffe in droves.
Definitely.
So while Hitler may have not thought of the Americans as a threat, he still wanted to conquer as much of the world as he could. His ambitions were mostly in his head, however, as no concrete plans for an invasion of America ever came to fruition.
It looks impossible.
The German High Command recognized that an invasion of this scale was beyond their abilities and resources at the time. After World War II and into the Cold War, many Americans became paranoid about a Soviet invasion of the US. Thankfully, nothing ever materialized. That brings us to the present, where the world again finds itself in a dangerous situation. East and West are still at odds, always with weapons at the ready.
Yep.
If a foreign power,
tense.
perhaps China or Russia, decided to launch a bold invasion of the US homeland, it would have to be highly sophisticated, coordinated, and move at terrifying speed. That is the only way it would work, requiring all the pieces to move in perfect synchronicity with each other.
Okay.
But in war, things hardly ever go according to plan. So what would a potential invasion look like? That is the question the generals in the Pentagon wrestle with, and even they can't say with absolute certainty how things would go down. Still, the consensus is that it would come in the form of a combined arms assault, with the bulk of the invasion being an amphibious landing.
Which surely...
Given the US's air...
Though.
I mean, they can give it a go.
Yeah, but surely they won't actually succeed.
Yeah, with the US Navy and Air Force,
but
they got
also,
no chance.
How big? Like, we're not talking about some little... We're not talking, they're gonna like...
Get
into Maine or something.
It'd take a long time as well.
How are they gonna...
if it did land
By the
somewhere, it'd take a long
well,
time.
exactly. The middle of the country is going to
You
know.
gotta think, like, a war can be 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, but like surely.
You're not talking a few months, wham bam, we're taking over the US.
Yeah, but what I mean is like surely by the time they get onto America, if they've not noticed already that they're coming for them,
they will
they're
know.
going to be ready for them.
Oh yeah, it's impossible for
Like
them
there's
to
no
get
way they're going to get off the shore, like off the shore states.
I feel like
without
they would
America taking them down.
Yeah, exactly. And America would know as soon as they left the country, like someone else, if Russia did it, because they'd see that many ships, they'd be able to know. I reckon they'd know already. So it's whether they can land. I mean, I don't think they can. If they can, then it could be a long, long time. You never know. Yeah. But I don't think they'll land. Like you said, the US, the Navy, they'll meet them halfway and batter them, I reckon.
Yeah.
Just a big bloodbath in the sea.
Nice.
We don't want a big bloodbath. But you say, but America will probably batter them, I reckon.
Let's not do that.
Yeah, let's not actually
the
do
enemies would need to maintain control of the battlefield to even have a prayer of this going well. A relevant example can be seen in the invasion of Normandy, where the Allies were able to secure air and naval superiority, giving them the upper hand they needed to push the Germans back. Additionally, in the Pacific theater of World War II, all of the American island campaigns were amphibious landings. These landings would have likely been massacres if not for the supremacy of the U.S. air and naval forces. In any case, where in the U.S. would foreign invaders strike first? An amphibious assault against the U.S. would most likely come from the West Coast, as the East Coast is more heavily defended given the many major military installations and shipyards spread over its length. Of course, the West Coast has a large military presence as well, so it's only a slightly better choice. Wherever they landed, enemy troops would seek to quickly capture as many deepwater ports as they could. The US beaches, by and large, are not consistently fortified against amphibious invasions, so if surprise is achieved, enemy forces could be rolling down Hollywood Boulevard before you could blink. The capture of ports such as Los Angeles, Long Beach, Oakland, Tacoma, and Seattle would be absolutely crucial to maintaining a strong supply line as the invasion moved into the interior.
Yeah.
That would be the first priority.
They ain't getting there, though.
Once the invaders could get supplies ashore, they would need to be able to move them. To do so, they would probably capture as many warehouses, armories, logistics, fuel, and railroad centers as they possibly can. Not only would this ensure supplies for their own armies, but it would deny resources for the U.S. forces. Yeah. It's possible for them to bring their own supply vehicles, but an amphibious invasion as daring as this would need to move quickly and not be over-encumbered with massive trucks. At least not in the first wave.
They're not fast, right?
Once a beachhead and
they're very slow.
What?
Tanks.
Well, yeah, but also you need a massive ship to hold them, which are going to be slower as well.
Yeah, I suppose it's going to be seen a lot easier too.
I feel like they're going to get seen no matter what, but yeah, more and more. And then, like you say, but you could bring them over after.
But I don't think they're making it.
Oh, yeah, but
I
think we've got to accept, though, this is if they did make this is
if.
They're probably not going to, but this is if they did, this is what you should do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because they ain't making it on land.
Yeah, they ain't.
Once supply are established, the troops could then move inland to take out strongholds and encircle large cities. As footholds are established, the great push into the interior would commence and would be a slugfest. Driving eastward would be a true challenge, but considerably easier than successfully landing an amphibious assault force. Once the tanks hit the highway of the Great Plains, who knows how far they could reach before they could be stopped. The goal here is absolute surprise, confusion, and fear. If the invading forces can achieve those things and establish a foothold before the US can adequately respond, then they might be in deep trouble. But let's be clear, this is an extremely optimistic view in which many factors would have to go the invaders' way for any hope of success. So let's look at what factors would deter the success of an invading force. First up is geography. The U.S. has built-in moats around it. The Atlantic and Pacific Oceans act as a natural defense barrier against any potential invaders. For centuries, these oceans have deterred would-be enemies from even thinking about invading, just due to the logistical challenges of getting that much men and material in place and across the water. Even today, launching amphibious invasions is a massive undertaking, even for advanced and wealthy nations, so the list of who could possibly pull this off is pretty small. As previously mentioned, the most likely spot for an invasion would come from the west coast, as the east coast is more heavily defended and the southern route through the Gulf of Mexico would have invading forces surrounded on three
Yeah,
sides
that's
by
not a good
American
route, that
air
one.
and naval
Yeah.
bases. Not to mention that this area of the country has the potential for devastating hurricanes half of the year.
That's
Not
scary
exactly
as well.
ideal conditions for thousands of men sitting on boats. Ask the Mongols how that one
That's
turned
so
out when they
bad.
tried to invade Japan. Once inland, geography is still on the side of the defenders. The United States has everything from deserts to high mountain ranges to lowland swamps. This variety in terrain is an attacker's nightmare, as this will require
Yeah,
a
imagine getting a
diverse
tank
set
on
of
that.
equipment and
But
Good
even
luck.
like, I feel like, I mean, I don't know too much about it, but that's why it was so difficult in like Afghanistan and stuff like that to move around, because you had canyons and
Terrain,
stuff
yeah,
like that.
terrain's not.
And suddenly you're going down this dirt road, which is the only way through. One road which is the only way through, surrounded by mountains. People just pop out left, right, and centre.
Yeah.
It's hard. You've got so much of it. I mean, like I say, if you're trained in it, yeah, that's great. But then you suddenly need a different terrain. It's like, well, okay, well, how do we get past this terrain?
Yeah.
It's definitely hard.
skills to overcome each one. That being said, if the invading troops were to get a foothold in the mountains, getting them out would be very tough. However, if the invading troops outpace their supply lines at the wrong time of year, they could find themselves not prepared for the weather, and Mother Nature has no mercy.
Yeah.
Desert warfare is extremely different from fighting in the alpine climate of the Rockies or down in the muggy, oppressive heat of the South. So if the Chinese or Russians wanted to take the US, they would need highly trained, conditioned, and well-supplied troops to be able to
And a lot of
maintain
them.
their high-speed offensive. If they don't, they risk getting bogged down in a protracted war. Guerrilla forces have utilized terrain to their advantage since time immemorial, and it would be no different in the US. Have you ever driven through the backroads of West Virginia or the swamps of Louisiana?
No.
So as you
Have
can
you?
see,
Nope.
geography plays a massive role in the outcome of an invasion for both the attacker and the defender. Now we have to acknowledge that there are other ways into the US. What if the attackers don't attack either coast? If somehow Canada or Mexico agree
That
to
is
let
true.
invading forces use their border with the US, that could potentially cause major problems.
That'll be harder to
Now,
defend.
this might seem outlandish, but stranger things have happened. Mexico or Canada could be coerced or bribed into this, but if they did, it would surely end badly. Although a land invasion is a lot simpler and quicker than an amphibious one, supply would still be an issue. The Canadian or Mexican ports of supply would surely be the first targets for US air power and are well within striking distance. So again,
it's
the
not far
key
away,
issue
is it?
to
Yeah,
this
I
whole
could
thing
figure
is
that
the
out.
ability to supply the invasion and maintain that supply. If the initial shock and awe didn't take out US air superiority, then the invading forces better be able to defend their supply depots. The US-Canadian border has a relatively low number of crossings fit for military vehicles, so the invasion would either be spread out or bottlenecked. If you look up the Highway of Death, you'll see how exactly the US deals with
Look at
tightly
that.
grouped military vehicle columns. The border has somewhat low security, but is still actively monitored and patrolled
Yeah.
by US law enforcement. The US-Mexico border is much more highly controlled and regulated. People still get through illegally, but if thousands of troops began massing in either country, it's reasonable
you'd
to assume
notice.
that US intelligence would notice.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I feel like.
Just a, what's going on here?
Yeah, I think
That
you
doesn't
would.
look right.
You would know, I think.
Definitely.
The good news is that both Canada and Mexico are on good terms with the US, and all parties profit immensely from trade. That
Yeah.
brings us
Yeah.
to the next factor that can make or break an invasion: technology. Remember when we talked
True.
about secrecy being a key to this whole thing? For any invasion of the US, the invaders would have to be able to mass their troops and supplies and move them into position in absolute secrecy.
That's
Lucky
not
for
going to
the
happen.
US, they have satellite programs that are highly advanced and critical for national defense. They can be used to detect and track troop movement, which would give US intelligence plenty of advanced warning if foreign armies were amassing troops and military equipment. They even have something called the Defense Support Program, or DSP, operated by the US Space Force. These satellites are a vital early warning system for national defense, operating in 22,300-mile geosynchronous orbits. They can
Wow.
detect missile launches, space launches, and nuclear detonations.
I mean, it means nothing to me, but that sounds pretty badass.
It sounds pretty cool.
It does.
They can detect missile launches, space launches, and nuclear detonations. In addition to satellite technology, the US military also has tremendous resources when it comes to radar and drones as well. For example, the US Navy has its own system known as ROTHR, or Relocatable Over-the-Horizon Radar. It can cover all of Central America, the Caribbean, and a large part of South America. Any
Okay.
direction an enemy
That's a
force approaches
big
from, if the
area.
radar is operational, there's eyes on them. The US drone industry used the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan as its test laboratory, greatly expanding its capabilities. The primary function has always been intelligence gathering and surveillance, and that function continues to grow with each passing year.
Yeah.
This is all to say that the US intelligence and early warning capabilities are incredibly complex and cover all areas around the borders of the United States. For any invader to even have the faintest hope of success, they would need to play a little dirty. Let's look at our next factor: unorthodox methods of attack. Warfare is getting more complicated. No one can disagree with that. It used to consist of two groups stabbing each other with metal blades, and now countries fight proxy wars in remote corners of the globe to control the flow of resources to manufacturers and consumers.
And like people not even on the ground at all. It is mad when you're actually thinking a short space of time, which I know it is a whole lifetime, but in a short space of time, how much it's actually advanced.
Yeah,
Do you know
true.
what I mean? Like
How much
today,
is, how we are today than 100 years ago.
like 100 years ago, you think about World War One, World War Two, and now literally wars can be fought
Even, like,
without
think about
people.
how
You need
much-
people, but
You think like how much has changed since we were like kids?
exactly, it's mad.
So much changed.
It's just mad the way it is, like just going, isn't it?
It's only
Upgrading.
getting like more, like I say
I can't think of
better.
a word. Yeah, I can't think of a word. There's
But
a word,
I guess
I can't
there
think
is
of it.
there is like,
Revolutionary
cons.
and
There's
stuff like that, I
cons
guess.
too, obviously, but I feel like it's only getting more advanced.
Advanced, yeah, that's a word. And just think, they say, well, 5-10 years, do a video like this, it'll be completely different. Do you know what I mean? Like the defence plan's going to be different because it'll be new stuff.
Yeah.
It's mad
And
how
the
quickly it
US
goes.
will buy it, don't worry.
Yeah, the US will have it.
all while maintaining their status on the world stage. To fight these ever-changing battles, new weapons are required. One of the greatest dangers in the years to come will be cyber attacks. These attacks can cripple government and private computer systems, cut internet access, disable water and electrical
cyber attacks
plants,
are big
and
now.
even scramble GPS systems to massive vehicles like oil tankers. There are a million use cases, but according to the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the main goal of cyber warfare is to weaken, disrupt, or destroy another nation. Deception in warfare is nothing new. In fact, it's one of the most critical aspects of it. The Allies would have been thrown back into the sea at Normandy if they hadn't employed a complicated deception against the Germans and convinced them the actual invasion was going to occur at a place called Pas de Calais up the coast. This deception stalled Hitler from committing his panzer reserves and allowed the Allies the time they needed to establish a beachhead and take the fight to the Germans.
Yep.
So if an invading army wanted to approach the United States in secret, they would surely have to employ some level of cyber attacks to give themselves a chance. Another unorthodox method of attack could come in the form of an EMP. This stands for electromagnetic pulse and is essentially a brief burst of electromagnetic energy. These have been weaponized and could be attached to missiles or other similar methods of delivery. Once detonated, these EMPs would overload and shut down the electrical grids, while also degrading or destroying all kinds of technology.
Which is mad, because like, that in itself would cause so much chaos.
Yeah.
Never mind the reason you're doing it.
Reason.
Like, just for people on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that would be crazy.
Absolute nightmare, and like, it could be a disaster in a lot of different reasons. The surprise bit's out of the way, though, because if you're the US, you know something's happening now.
Yeah, I think you've figured it out now.
You might not know where, but you're getting ready.
You know what's going on.
And like you say, then the UK, you'd think would have access, other countries would have access to it to be able to warn them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And the US is so big, they're not going to be able to UMP the entire US. At least I wouldn't think they were. Do you know what I mean? Everywhere in the whole US EMP'd at the same time.
Yeah, I don't think it would be in stages.
Yeah, it's not going to happen, is it? So I think they'd be able to figure out what was going on.
This could include everything from cell phones to car engines to generators. An EMP is a quick and easy way to take an opponent's technological advantage and roll back the clock to before the Industrial Revolution. So while America was blind and deaf to the outside world, trying to figure out what happened, an invading army could use the chaos as the perfect opportunity to strike. Technology aside, another more practical method of softening up an area for invasion is good old-fashioned military sabotage. It's not a secret that US air and naval power are second to none.
Yeah.
So if an invading force wanted to level the playing field, they would embed agents who would conduct coordinated strikes against US air and naval facilities in the hours before the invasion was to begin.
From the inside, is it?
Now, I know what you're thinking. Those facilities have extreme levels of security, and you are correct, but that doesn't mean they're impenetrable.
Okay.
Here's another example from Normandy. The French resistance was crucial to the success of the invasion. Without the efforts to sabotage German rail and communication networks, the whole offensive could have collapsed.
Oh, wow.
Some level of military sabotage could be one of the deciding factors in the outcome of a potential invasion. As Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu once said, there is no greater danger than underestimating your opponent.
Yeah, never do
In
that.
terms of battlefield tactics, it doesn't get more simple or tried and true than divide and conquer. In this modern era of proxy wars and cyber attacks, the weapons of war are changing all the time. With every new invention, there is a brief period when people use it for good and the overall betterment of the human race, but inevitably it becomes weaponized.
Yeah.
As an example, the first flight was in 1903, and by 1911, planes were being used as weapons. In August of 1945, two
quick
atomic bombs were
turnaround.
dropped on Japan from a heavy bomber plane. From the first flight to dropping bombs capable of decimating cities, it only took 42 years.
Yeah.
It's no surprise that the internet, for all of its positives, has the potential to become a weapon. Spreading misinformation or outright
that's so
propaganda can
I mean, I feel like in
That's
aspects
so
it can
true.
already be a weapon,
I think
not
so as
become a
well.
weapon.
I
It's
think,
mad, isn't
yeah, I
it?
feel like it's definitely got its disadvantages.
Oh yeah,
It's
definitely.
dangerous.
Like
It's
not even on a
dangerous.
military level.
It's dangerous.
Definitely, definitely.
It's helpful, but dangerous.
Yeah.
actively divide a population and cause conflicts between family members and friends. A foreign power could weaponize the internet with the intent of sowing incredible amounts of division within the United States. A divided and weak country that doesn't know what to believe would be much easier to conquer than one that is united
True.
and strong.
Very true.
Now, all of this
But the US
talk of
normally does
sabotage and
unite.
cyberattacks
Yeah.
assumes
It
that
normally
the
does.
invading force wants to subdue the US and conquer it to govern. What if their intentions are more malicious than that? What if they just want to burn it all down and govern the ashes? Biological warfare is a nightmare scenario for the world and hopefully never really happens. According to the WHO,
definitely.
biological and toxin weapons are either microorganisms like virus, bacteria, or fungi, or toxic substances produced by living organisms that are produced and released deliberately to cause disease and death in humans, animals, or plants.
So that's pretty much like a COVID on steroids. But it's been deliberately like spread and
Spread
given
on
and stuff like
purpose.
that. Right, I don't want any conspiracy theories, and I've said that by the way.
I know.
In my
I
conspiracy.
literally-
Stay
in
away
my
from
head, I
that.
literally
Just
thought,
thought,
oh my
oh,
God,
what have I
Someone's
done?
gonna say it was on purpose.
Just be happy, enjoy life. But imagine that they're doing it on purpose continuously. That's a disaster, isn't it?
it's
That
a
is a
disaster.
disaster.
Weaponizing anthrax, the plague, or something similar would cause untold amounts of death and suffering to all of North America. Diseases don't care about borders. Let's hope no
Yeah.
country
True.
is that evil to inflict this degree of suffering on their fellow man. Following this deadly progression, then you have nuclear weapons. If a foreign power truly has no regard
big
for the
boys.
So sad about
consequences of
this.
its actions, then it could consider using nuclear arms as a method of clearing out resistance in the US. Again, all it would achieve would be governing decimated land and radiated bones. Not exactly ideal, but if someone wanted to do to the US what the Romans did to Carthage, this would be the most efficient way in today's technology.
But could the
But
US not
perhaps
give one
the most
back?
imp-
Oh, no, that is the point.
So they'll know when a nuke's been sent.
Yeah, but the radar, as soon as one is
Oh,
getting
pop up.
released, and it's not obviously instant, it takes its time to get over. And I think the whole idea, if someone sends one, someone's going to reply, and they're going to send another, and it's just going to be back and forth, and everyone's going to get involved because we're all allies and stuff like that, and then we're all dead.
So wait a minute. These are things I need to talk about because this really freaks me out. If someone nukes the US, how is that going to reach us?
That one nuke won't, but again, let us know in the comments.
But then the US probably would return.
They return, then someone else
With
returns,
that-
someone else returns, and then suddenly we're in it, and then we're dead, and then happy days.
I'm not being funny, but could the UK just stay out of it? If the UK stayed out of it and didn't give any nukes off, would we be okay?
It doesn't quite work like that. But what I say, don't worry about it, because we can't control that.
No,
And
I know, but I'd like
if it
to.
did happen, it's just one of them, it's just instant.
So, but what's the point? The whole world's dead.
Yeah, I know.
But what is the point? I don't understand. What does that achieve? Nothing.
Yeah, no, it doesn't achieve that. But if you're a power-hungry person who
Yeah, but you're not
can't
going to
take
get power because
losing...
you're going to be dead.
Yeah, I know, but you think about criminals who will do these stupid things.
Bro, if they
there are these people out there who will do a stupid thing. I understand your logic, but people will do it.
But if you don't like losing, then that's as lost as you can get.
Anyway, we could carry on. We've had this conversation a million times before, I think. So we could carry on. It's a long video anyway, so we carry on.
Biggest loser.
So we carry on?
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
It
is what it is.
An important factor in all of this is the United States military itself. The U.S. military is one of the most advanced, highly trained, and equipped militaries in the world, and can seriously throw its weight around when it feels like it. As it currently stands, there are over 750 U.S. military bases around the world.
Oh, wow.
The global
That's just
presence
out
of
of
the
the
U.S.
Yeah.
cannot be understated, but it also has between 450 to 500 bases or locations in the U.S. itself. U.S. air and naval power would be crucial in the opening stages of an amphibious invasion. So protecting those resources and keeping them ready to fight at any given moment is a high priority for U.S. defense planners. With around 1.4 million active duty service members, the U.S. is currently the third largest military in the world. Any invasion of the United States would have to deal with a large number of active duty troops in the country, as well as about 450,000 National Guard members who can be called up at any moment.
And there's more guns than people, and there's 340, well, I don't know how many there's around 340 million people in the US.
Yeah.
And there's more guns than people, so there's enough to go around to defend.
Yeah, there's enough for everyone to have like
For
one, if
defending.
not two.
Yes,
each.
not everyone's trained, but still a lot of people. It's a
Yeah,
lot
but
of people.
I still feel like if...
And a lot of them are trained
But
themselves.
even if they're not, still scary.
That's what I mean, it's a lot of people, isn't it?
Yeah.
Key factor would be how effectively the U.S. could bring back troops from bases all over the world to fight to defend their homeland. In comparison, China has over 2 million active duty soldiers with many more in reserve. Russia has around 2.2 million service members with their numbers in constant fluctuation due to the ongoing fighting in Ukraine.
True.
The rising casualties have made the Russians conscript a lot of their citizens who otherwise would not be in the military. Their level of training, the equipment they carry, and their battlefield effectiveness vary greatly between the different units.
Okay.
In terms of a land battle on the numbers alone, this should be a pretty close fight where the US has the advantage with its navy. The US Navy is widely considered to be the best and most powerful in the world. Its mix of warships, submarines, and an intimidating carrier fleet make it a formidable opponent. The US Navy's global presence and the firepower it can bring to the fight are an incredible deterrent to would-be enemies. That's really bad news for anyone trying to stage, launch, and execute an amphibious invasion. As President Teddy Roosevelt once said, "A good navy is not a provocation to war, it is the surest guarantee of peace." In addition to the active duty and National Guard units, the U.S. has an advantage that the other countries simply don't have. The citizens of the U.S. are the most well-armed country in the world.
There we go.
It's estimated that there are around 390 million guns in the U.S. currently.
That's
That's
mad.
around 120 guns per 100 people. As I'm sure
But
you're
then,
aware,
you
everyone...
gotta think a lot, like, some of those are gonna be, like, newborn babies, children.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I'm not giving a 1-year-old a gun.
Yeah, 100%.
So you gotta think about it that way. I suppose it probably is,
you're
like...
not suddenly you're not shaving off 100 million for that, though, are you? You're probably shaving off,
Quite a few, I guess.
well, yeah, 40 million.
I don't know.
I don't know, there's definitely a lot more adults. I don't know what the ratio is.
No, there definitely is, but...
I reckon there's a minimum 250
well, it takes
million
2 adults
adults.
to make one child, so that's my logic.
And then the child grows up, and not everyone has children.
Yeah,
but some have 5, some
what
have 20.
I'm saying is I know it's 120 to 100 people,
Yeah.
but then, like...
Well, it's even more then. If you not every person out, it's probably 120. It's probably like 200 guns for 100 adults.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of guns
So
to
it's
go
just
around.
adults with 2
And
guns.
there's probably 250 million people, 2 guns. If one breaks, get another. Why not?
We've got them in the back.
Why not?
Everyone today has an opinion on gun ownership, and they are entitled to it, but in the event of a full-scale invasion by a foreign power, they might come in handy. It's
Definitely.
almost a surefire thing that if given the chance, militias of well-armed US citizens could rise up and conduct guerrilla warfare operations against the invaders. Although it is unverified that Admiral Yamamoto of the Japanese Empire reportedly said, We can never invade America. There would be a rifle behind every blade of grass. While he may never
Not
have
wrong.
said this quote, it undoubtedly rings true. If we look at recent examples of combat for how each nation fared, we can get a rough idea of how this might play out. Let's start with the US. Having fought essentially continuous wars for over a century, the US military is a juggernaut of practical combat experience.
Yeah.
The past 20 years alone have seen the US fight 2 wars, and although you can't say they won clear-cut victories in either one, the battlefield experience gained there for everyone from the generals at the Pentagon down to the riflemen guarding the street corner will serve the US going forward for decades to come.
And that's offshore being the aggressor. It's different being a
Homeland's different.
homeland defending. It's easier. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Definitely.
And when you got your backup of your civilians.
Definitely.
The weapons technology in those wars has been tested and refined through the high-stakes trial and error that is combat. It's no secret that the US is the premier weapons manufacturer in the world. After finally leaving Afghanistan in 2021, which was a disaster, the US military is going through a phase similar to what happened after Vietnam. It's downsizing and rearming.
Yeah.
This level of experience stands in stark contrast to that of China. They have not fought an actual war since 1979 when
Long
they
time.
fought Vietnam
Oh,
over
wow.
Vietnam's conflict with Cambodia. The war lasted about a month and saw no clear winner.
Oh, it's only
so
a
even
month.
if any of the men who fought in that war are still alive, it was 45 years ago as of 2024, and they would
So
be
they
a
don't get
little on
involved
the
in war
older
anymore.
side.
Well,
They
it's
don't
not that
go to war.
They don't. Not that they don't,
Or they
go
don't
to war.
make
Don't
their
they? But they
own
just
wars.
haven't had a war to be
Okay.
involved in. There's the whole, not incident, but tension with Taiwan. I think it is Taiwan and stuff like that. They have a big military. They just haven't been involved in any wars recently. I don't think that necessarily means they don't go to war. They haven't got a policy, we won't go to war, but they just haven't been involved. I don't actually know. Let us know in the comments if you do know. But yeah, I feel like if they could, or
I'll be on Google after this.
if it benefited them, they might do. I don't know. Let us know in the comments.
That means that all the enlisted men,
Good to go,
junior
good.
officers, and a good amount
Yeah.
of the senior officers have no actual combat experience. That is a major disadvantage for any army going into war.
Definitely.
Until the bullets start flying, we have no idea how the Chinese military will actually react. The Russian military has fought multiple regional conflicts since the fall of the Soviet Union, most notably against Chechnya, Dagestan, and Georgia. Those were
Okay.
smaller in scale and against comparatively inferior forces. It wasn't until the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022 that the Russian
It's not that long
military
ago it
had its mettle
started.
tested properly. And unless you've been hiding under a rock, you probably heard something of what's happening in Ukraine. During the first days of the invasion, Russia initially swept deep into the Ukrainian defenses, causing massive breakthroughs with their superior armor. The Ukrainians stood their ground, however, with a little help from Western weapons, and pushed the Russians back to a stalemate. Both sides have dug in, and the territorial gains are minimal now, but casualty figures keep climbing. The
Oh,
Russians
really?
continue to bombard Ukrainian cities, while Ukraine uses drones to target Russian ships and infrastructure. This is the largest and most destructive conflict Europe has seen since World War II, and as of the production of this video, it doesn't seem like it will end anytime soon. The Russian military has had some successes, but has also struggled more than most people would have guessed. Civil unrest due to conscription orders and the wars on popularity are making the Russian home front increasingly turbulent.
Yeah.
Have the ghosts of 1917 returned? The parallels are too eerie to be dismissed. Stalemates, trench warfare, civil unrest, and an oppressive government that will do anything to remain in power. The only thing you're missing is a drunken and mystical holy man named Rasputin. Only time will tell if things go the same route as they did in 1917, but one thing is certain, a lot more blood will be spilled whichever way the chips fall.
Which is always sad,
Of
isn't
course,
it?
all of this is speculative, so no one can say with absolute certainty how an invasion of the United States would go. That's the thing about warfare. The victors usually do something bold or unexpected. As it
Yes.
stands, the US is one of the most secure countries on Earth. Its geographical advantages, such as 2 massive oceans on either side of it,
Yeah.
insulate it from traditional ground invasions and make
Things
it
like,
amphibious.
yeah, the winners normally do something bold and surprise, but it's harder. It's getting harder and harder to do something surprising
It is.
because
with the amount
everything
of
can be
technology and
detected
stuff like that, yeah.
stuff like that. So it's like,
getting
how
harder to
do
do
you
that.
surprise people?
Invasion one of the few viable options available to would-be invaders. Amphibious invasions are incredibly hard to pull off successfully. Even with the technology we have at our disposal today, an invasion force still has to get their troops together in position and onto the beaches. As we learned with Normandy, surprise and deception play a large role in the outcome of such invasions. However, the Axis didn't have spy satellites or drones watching every move the Allies made.
Yeah.
The role technology plays in warfare today cannot be understated and is growing at an unprecedented pace. For an invader to have a chance, they would have to disrupt or disable the US's intelligence and technological capabilities before they hit the beaches. If they can't keep the US in the dark, they will struggle mightily to fight off US air and naval power. That being said, there are a few options they have for softening up the landing zones and country beyond. Some are more malicious than others.
Yeah.
Cyber attacks and EMPs can disable technology in the blink of an eye and cause mass chaos and confusion. Such a move would undoubtedly give the attackers a clear-cut advantage in reconnaissance, communications, and high-tech weapon systems. If they go another route, such as using biological warfare, social subversion, or even nuclear weapons, things can get real ugly real quick. Nothing pulls people together quicker than a crisis, though, and the appearance of a terrifying common enemy might be just enough to have Americans set aside their differences and take up arms together to defend their families and homes. It's this unity that will allow America to prosper in the face of conflict. And this perhaps reveals who is most likely to be able to destroy America: America itself. This quote from Abraham Lincoln has the same profound importance today as when it was first said. Shall we expect some transatlantic military giant to step the ocean and crush us at a blow? Never. All the armies of Europe, Asia, and Africa combined, with all the treasure of the earth, our own excepted, in their military chest, with a Bonaparte for a commander, could not by force take a drink from the Ohio or make a track on the Blue Ridge in a trial of 1,000 years.
Wow.
At what point, then, is the approach of danger to be expected? I answer, if it ever reach us, it must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide. It should be clear to everyone watching that any type of war between the world's top 3 militaries or an invasion of the US would end in unmitigated disaster and death for millions, possibly even billions. If you like this video, now watch...
Yeah, we don't want it because we don't want deaths. We don't want that, especially when you talk about billions. Abraham Lincoln quote, though, I mean, it's a little bit scary. Not scary, but when you think like how when people say how divided America is and stuff like that, and then literally there's a quote from Abraham Lincoln all them years ago, been like, the only way we're going to get destroyed is by destroying ourselves.
Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't get to that. We honestly don't know much about it, so I'm saying that just because we get told all the time it's a divided country. Everyone be happy, try and get on, and yeah, hopefully we don't go to war. But it seems like the US, unless they blow themselves up, which it sounds like they're not going to do, it's pretty sound.
Unless nukes come out.
Yeah, unless nukes come out, and then what are we going to do? Eh? What are we going to do?
We'll see you guys up there.
I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you've made it to this point in the video, what should we put in the comments? Legend. Just legend. Google.
So I'm going to go and Google so much after this.
Yeah,
I've got so many questions in my head
need to make amends.
that are way too stupid for YouTube that Google will accept.
Smash that button, guys. Smash that subscribe button. What should we do?
Have a fantastic day.
And we'll see you legends in the next one. Peace.